If you'd have told me 2 years ago that I'd be jacked up to do a Vandy preview, I don't know that I would have believed you, but I am kind of excited for this Vanderbilt preview. Can they make a bowl again, Cole? That's the number one question on my mind right now in looking at Vandy's season.
So before we head on into Nashville for 2025, let's look back at 2024. Diego Pavia comes on in, who I call Baba Yaga, because if he is the boogeyman, he is the ultimate nightmare for any team that you feel like has a little bit of that spark, especially if you're in the state of Alabama, because Hugh Freeze lost to him when he was at Liberty. He lost to him when he was at New Mexico State. He lost to him when he was at Vanderbilt. But last season, they started off really strong. I believed that Virginia Tech was going to take that next step forward. Brent Pry brought back 97% of the production. Didn't matter because the legend of Diego Pavia started week one. Massive overtime upset against Virginia Tech. They get a win against Alcorn State. They lose in sporadic fashion to Georgia State and then double overtime loss to Missouri, or they would have been undefeated going into that matchup against Alabama, and they would have actually been 7-0 to begin the year. Everyone talks about the upset with Alabama. They then carried that momentum into the game against Kentucky, then Ball State, before losing 27-24 to Texas. That game really wasn't close. Like, yeah, the score says it was, but it wasn't. Texas was in control all the way up until the fourth quarter. They find a way to get a win on the road again against Auburn, which, again, just seems to be the problem for Hugh Freeze. He needed a quarterback last year. The quarterback that's now beaten him 3 times absolutely was able to go ahead and deliver. Losses to LSU, South Carolina, Tennessee to close out the year. However, they do get a signature win over Georgia Tech in the Birmingham Bowl to close out the season, 7-6. Bowl game, coach of the year, Clark Lee. They return the 2 main elements of that offense from last season. Diego Pavia didn't go anywhere, and neither did his type tight end, Eli Stowers. So those 2 are back. You also still have a very good rushing attack headlined by Junior Sherrill. You also have Jeremiah Dillon coming on in. You also feel really good about your wide receiver room, at least with what you have. That was the wide receiver room. You feel really good about your running back room because if you have Shedrick Alexander and AJ Newberry, Junior Sherrill still is back as your star as your star wide receiver. Transfer portal, they have 4 new starters on the offensive line. Probably the key one that you got to talk about, Bryce Henderson comes on in from South Dakota, was a standout for the Coyotes last year. They also landed Sterling Poacher from Texas Tech. They also landed Gunnar Givens from Virginia Tech. They landed Isaiah Glass, who was a former starting tackle for Oklahoma State. And they also landed Jordan White from Liberty. They brought in wide receiver Trenton Hudson from Mississippi State and a couple of other players that I think are going to be pretty big hits. What they're losing in terms of starting talent was a bit of hit and miss at times. They are losing guys like Quincy Skinner on the defensive side. They're losing CJ Taylor and Ricky Wright, but they were able to bring in decent guys on terms of the transfer portal. The recruiting class. 4-star safety Carson Lawrence. They also brought in Vincent Hinton. They also brought in George Aracori. Their schedule, it's going to be really interesting. I'm not sure what to make of it entirely. I think there's an opportunity for them to still be able to control their destiny. They start off the season off with Charleston Southern. Then they go to Blacksburg to play against Virginia Tech. And I can tell you right now, that is going to be a game where Brent Pry cannot afford to go 0-2. Because remember, Virginia Tech opens the season against South Carolina down in Atlanta. So that is a big-time game for Brent Pry to kind of save his job. Then they go play against South Carolina on September 13th in Williams-Brice Stadium. Other key games you have to look for, Saturday, October 4th against Alabama in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I promise you, the Crimson Tide are salivating at the mouth to have that opportunity. They welcome in Missouri on October 25th. That's a Missouri game they felt like they should have won. They lost at the very last second. Big-time field goal to go ahead and save the day. They play Kentucky, Tennessee, and Auburn to close out the year. I think all 3 are winnable games. What am I looking for from this Vanderbilt squad? Can you duplicate the success? What do we get for the encore of Baba Yaga? Remember, this is a guy that said he wanted to come back. The NCAA gave him the opportunity to get the waiver because if he's playing at junior college. There's a shot to where this team offensively with Tim Bexell as the offense coordinator. I'm not expecting them to be anything more than just a 7-win team. But 7 wins back-to-back years at Vanderbilt shows you that they can be a program that kind of takes over as what Kentucky was in the 2010s, trending upward with the right head coach, eventually becoming a place to where you're looking at other SEC schools like Georgia or South Carolina or Ole Miss, and it becomes a transfer portal destination, very similar to Kentucky. What can we expect from this defense losing so many pieces? And again, it's Clark Lee's bread and butter. It's his IQ, baby. He loves this defense. He took over the play calling last year, said, if I'm going to go down at my alma mater, I'm going to go down my way. Can they find a way to get a few upset wins or play competitive football? What do you look like against Tennessee? What do you look like against Alabama? What do you look like against Missouri? What do you look like against Texas on the road this year? And at the end of the day, can you make it to a bowl